Most South Africans like to believe that help is coming, backup, security, someone else stepping in. But in reality, when violence hits, odds are that you're going to be on your own, not part of a team. Today, we break down what it actually means to be a lone operator and why most people are dangerously underprepared and unprepared for that reality. I'm talking to Gerard van der Westhuizen, one of the senior instructors of the Lone Operator Training course. Gerard, good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, Rian. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, welcome back. We haven't spoken in a while, so it's always nice to chat again.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It has been a while. I'm going to kick off with this. I want to strip away, because, lots of people look at the pictures and there's this almost an image. People are often shown in the pictures, especially if you're looking at lone operator training courses, and they've got their gear on and jackets and knee pads and all kinds of stuff like that. So there is a certain tactical impression. But if we strip all of that away, what does lone operator actually really look like for your everyday civilian out there? And why do you think it's probably the most likely reality that they will face, this whole thing that they will have to handle whatever comes their way in terms of criminal trouble by themselves?
Yeah, Rian, that is one thing that social media and the movies has brought over to the general public and photos is the whole tactical image, the gear, the movements, all that funny stuff. And that's what people think you're going to do, and that's how you're going to operate. But unfortunately, that's not the reality. You, as like we call the lone operator, is the average day civilian that has to operate when under threat, when under pressure, when your life of your family is threatened, and you have to act accordingly without the tactical outfits and gear and who knows what. It's you and you alone.
So we know that, if you look at a typical lone operator course, and I'm running away from my prepared questions a little bit here, but I just want to create this picture because it's important. If you look at a typical lone operator course, which stretches over a 12-month period, there are some of the modules where the students are told that they are welcome to wear all their gear because people want to do that. And in that respect, it serves as a very handy test bed to ensure that, all their gear is the right stuff and it works and it will not fail them if it ever comes down to that. But the reality is that there are probably more modules where people work without that, purely because we are also very aware of the fact that if trouble suddenly knocks on your front door at 3 o'clock in the morning, odds are that you will not be grabbing all of that stuff. You'll be grabbing your gun, probably without an extra magazine. If you're lucky, you'll remember a torch.
Yeah.
And I think it's safe enough to say that the majority of the training is focused on that. Whilst part of it is literally a test bed for people's gear, the idea not to be tactical. And I also think that what we've seen with students, especially when they've finished the first 2 years of the course, when they come to the 3rd and 4th year, then they start finding almost a rhythm in all of this, where they start focusing more on it's like they realize the gear is nice, but there are other things a lot more important. And then from the 3rd year on, the focus really shifts to upskilling.
Yeah, Rian, when you start lone operator, we advocate, promote, and encourage that we train from EDC, everyday carry, because that's the way you're going to be out there in real life. you are not going to walk around with your bulletproof on or your leg rig holster or stuff like that, because South African law, we have to conceal. So if you don't practice and train that way, when the pawpaw hits the fan, you won't know how to react correctly. But then on the other hand, like you said, we also encourage the guys to bring their gear to the range. If they decided to buy, say, a bulletproof or leg rig or whatever the case might be, to come to the range, test it there, and train with it there when the module calls for it, so that they know how it works and that it's set up correctly for when they want to use it, say, in rural or farm areas or patrolling or whatever the case might be. Because you don't want your equipment to fail the first time you use it under stress or when you really need it.
Yes, yeah. And I mean, we've seen now it's like it's a bit like buying cycling gear. Everybody buys the coolest stuff, but not everybody is actually capable of finishing a race that's 90 or 100 or whatever kilometers in length, irrespective of the fact that they've got all the cool gear, because you actually need to know your gear and be able to work with your gear and train with that gear.
Yeah,
well, that's
the
crucial.
gear doesn't make the person.
The gear doesn't make the person. Okay. What would you say is one of the bigger misconceptions that people believe about their own ability to handle violence on their own? And how dangerous can that belief end up being in a real world situation?
Rian, coming back again to social media, movies, that kind of stuff, it does portray when the pawpaw hits the fan, you are going to operate. You are going to clear your house. You are going to fight around a vehicle, because that's the picture we have in our mind. That's what we want to create. That's the story we want to believe, because that's what we've seen, made to believe. Unfortunately, it is a very big misconception, because if you do not train accordingly, if you haven't done it before, you will freeze basically, because you haven't trained it. You won't know how to act upon a certain situation. It comes down to, it's going to be your responsibility. You need to do the fight. There's not going to be any backup. The timing is not going to be on your side. You are not going to be in the most perfect position like you would think you'd be. And then you have to act still.
Yeah, I think that's a reality that can often be rather brutal. And it's not necessarily easy to face if you've been convincing yourself forever that, you'll handle it. This is part of the reason why we are forever telling people, check out the training. Go get training. There are many good trainers in this country. Make use of them, invest in it. It's an investment. It's an investment in enhancing your survival odds. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah, you will react better if you have trained a similar scenario or situation. It doesn't have to be exact, but if you sort of had training in similar, say, around vehicles, once a situation occurs where you need to fight around a vehicle, it's not going to be that new. You sort of have an idea of what to do, how to act. But if you've never done it before, where do you start?
Now, I mean, for me, the beauty of proper training and realistic training is that it starts exposing you to pressure and pressure situations. So that if the brown stuff hits the whirly thingy, that's not the first time that you suddenly have to try and work the situation, but your stress levels have completely spiked through the roof, and your body goes into your brain goes into almost a bit of a shutdown mode and a panic. So proper training and regular training, I think, helps to put you in a position where you learn to understand pressure better and you learn to work under pressure better. And that very often can be a huge difference.
And unfortunately, part of the misunderstanding or misconcept is, if I've done it once, I know what to do. then I don't have to do the training again or the course
Yes.
again, whatever the case might be, because I've done it. I've got the certificate, I've got the badge, I'm
Mm.
sorted. Unfortunately, life doesn't work that way. If you haven't done it for a couple of months, you lose that skill. It's a perishable skill.
If we look at violent encounters, how much of surviving a violent encounter do you think is decided before the event actually happens? And what mental decisions should someone already have made in advance?
That all comes back to having the right mindset. The reality is, the fact is, we live in South Africa. We live in a very dangerous country. You can be who you want. You cannot deny it. I mean, every day you see reports of some attack somewhere happening. So if you do not have the mindset that it can happen to me, already you're on the back foot. Because the fact is, yes, it can. And if I can add on to that,
Yes.
the fact that when you get to that mindset, then you need to get into the process of decision making on getting the right mindset. Is part of the training, part of scenario training is when will you act? How will you act or react? Who are you going to defend? And if you haven't done those scenario-based trainings, it's difficult to, in that situation, act upon it. And then the misperception again on mindset is you're not going to rise to the level of your expectation. What everyone thinks, what everyone sees, again, on movies, social media, whatever the case may be. The reality is you are going to fall to the level of your training.
Okay. Where does physical fitness realistically fit into self-defense or private defense? And what are the consequences when somebody's body cannot keep up with their intentions in a violent situation?
Yeah, physical fitness is something we promote on every course that we present at Lone Operator. We start every module with a PT session.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not PT in a sense of being a marathon runner or a triathlete or doing the Ironman, a professional athlete. That's not the idea. The idea is that you need to be fit in a sense of functional fitness. Can you functionally move your body? Can you do a couple of squats? Can you cover a certain distance without fainting? Because the fitter you are, the better you can move when time calls for it, when there's pressure, when you need to get either stepping off the X, as we call it, moving behind cover. When you go into prone and back up and back into prone, I mean, that's already your legs work like crazy. So if you can't do that, you're already on the back foot.
Mm.
And then also, the fitter you are, the better your body handles that adrenaline dump that you get once you get into that shock situation, once stress sets in, because your body gets a massive adrenaline dump. That's where you get that auditory exclusion, tunnel vision, get the shakes. But your body handles that better the fitter you are. So if you get into a basic routine of just functional fitness, carry your grocery bags to your car, taking the steps instead of the elevator, that's a big start just to get your body moving. Because also, I mean, if you look at close quarter battle, you won't have time to say draw a firearm. You need to have a physical altercation. How long can you be in that altercation and still walk out the other side as the winner? How long can a fight isn't just a minute or two. It can carry on for minutes and minutes. I mean, you talk about half an hour, even more. Can you stay in that fight?
At this point, I want to just remind the viewers to go and check out www.battlefit.co.za. I think you will find a lot of worth in that. If we take
Definitely.
away perfect range conditions, what shooting skills would you say actually matter when you are all alone, under pressure, and facing maybe more than one threat?
Your shooting skills, a lot of people have the misperception, as I said, the 7 fundamentals, of which one is stance. Now, you need to be able to shoot fast and accurate. Doesn't matter what your footing or your stance or position is. That's why I have different shooting positions. So it comes back to the 3 basic fundamentals, which is grip, sight, squeeze.
Mhm.
With those 3 fundamentals, you can rappel out of a chopper and still have shots on a relevant target. So having that in mind, if you focus on those fundamentals, you basically can engage any situation. But then you must also practice enough to get your shooting skills up to par that you can do it fast and accurate. Because unfortunately, a lot of guys go to the range, they want to shoot fast because it's fun, but
Mm.
accuracy is all over the place. Now, I mean, a fast miss is still a miss. So
True.
the fact that you might or might not win the fight can depend on that first shot you take. So are you confident enough that that first shot will be before your attacker shoots and will be accurate?
So,
Otherwise, he's going to win the fight.
in other words, you need to shoot as often as you can and more and dry fire.
Dry fire, very important.
Mm.
It costs you nothing, but you must also keep in mind and realize dry fire isn't just going through the motions. You must actively think of what you are doing. Why am I doing this? And practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. So
I like
when
it.
you do a dry fire, whatever you are practicing, do it with intent and do it perfectly. And then take that back to the shooting range and see if your recoil control can manage your training.
So, just on the subject of dry fire, in other words, dry fire with specific goals in mind.
Correct. It's not just going through motions, drawing, whatever the case might be. Say, I'm struggling with clearing the garment. Focus on clearing the garment properly every time. If it's a mag change, make sure you can get that mag into the firearm every time, reliable and efficiently.
Yeah, and then apply it on the range. Okay.
Correct.
So, I mean, we know that real encounters don't have perfect options. Um, how do you think someone should think about making decisions under that kind of pressure? And what do you think separates people from, or people who act from people who freeze?
Again, this comes back to mindset and fitness. The fitter you are, the better your body will manage adrenaline rush, the better you will react to whatever is happening, and your fight or flight mode will go more towards the fight than flight or freeze for that matter.
Mm.
A lot of guys, if they haven't done any training, haven't been exposed to any pressure training, once they're put under stress, they sort of freeze. It's like they don't know what to do because I've never been in that situation. So part of Lone Operator, what we do is we do scenario-based training where we put you under pressure under certain scenarios so your body can get used to those kind of reactions. And we then see it on the likes of a level 2, level 3, and even level 4, how they progress on reacting to certain stress scenarios, pressure scenarios. They cut out the noise, they cut out what's happening behind them, they focus on what they need to do now, what we call the win principle, what's important now. There's a target or there's an attacker, and that's what I need to focus on. And the problem is also with that adrenaline dump, like we said, with the tunnel vision, you might think there's only one attacker. Unfortunately, in South Africa, again, as statistics have shown, there's usually more than one. You talk 5 upwards attackers. So if you don't scan, like we say, everywhere to see who else is there, what other targets there can be, you'll be in trouble.
I wanna end with this next question, and it's back to the lone operator theme. Lone operator literally boils down to the fact that when something bad goes down, you are going to be operating by yourself, all alone, hence lone operator. So it's a descriptive term more than anything else. So when we bring this into everyday life situations that faces South African citizens, in a parking lot, at a petrol garage where we put in fuel, or for the American listeners, gas. We call it petrol in South Africa. We talk about petrol garages, believe it or not,
Yes.
not gas stations. So robberies happen in the forecourts where people are busy putting in gas, petrol. Home invasions, serious problem over here. Under those circumstances and realities, what does operating alone actually demand from a person in those first few critical seconds?
It's exactly like you say, Riaan. It's the first few critical seconds. So a lot of it boils down to situational awareness. Unfortunately, I see a lot of people when I'm out and about that it is there. It's on the phone. They are clueless of what's happening around them. Walking in the shops, in the mall, even in a car, get to a robot stop street and on their phone, clueless of what's happening around them. So it all starts with being situational aware. What's happening around me? If you take, like you say, fuel stations or gas stations, even the convenience shop at the gas station.
Yes.
How many robberies happen there? Because people are just in a different world. They are sort of clueless because they're not situational aware. The signs are all there if you just look around. And by that, I'm not saying you need to be all stressed out and worried. It's just look around, have your head on a swivel, and be aware of your surroundings. I mean, that's in any public space, whether it's parking lots, whether it's malls, convenience shops, just be aware. And then if we bring that back to your own life, to your home, what's your setup at home? If you think about nighttime attacks, 95% of attacks happen at night under cover of darkness. Is your setup at your house in such a way that there's levels of protection? Do you know of an intruder before they get into your house? Can you be prepared before they are there? I mean, once they are next to your bed, it's too late.
Yep.
So is your levels of protection sorted? Because yes, for a lot, it's just you, a lone operator. I'm looking after myself. But for a lot of people, they've got families, they've got loved ones with them who I need to protect. Are they aware of any action plans, let's call it that, when something happens? When you go and sort out the problems, does your wife know what to do? Do the kids know what to do in certain situations? So you, by being mentally prepared, by being situational aware, by having systems in place, you are already a step ahead and mitigate a lot of problems.
I know that when you talk about this and you mention these things, there are lots of people out there who sigh like I just did and think, I mean, I'm not John Wick. I'm just a regular person. I don't want to live like that. And the thing is, I think we understand that very well. It isn't necessarily for everybody. So for me personally, what it comes down to is just, even if it's just a higher level of situational awareness, anything that can help you to prevent a potential problem as far as possible, because there are no guarantees. But if by being more situationally aware of what goes on around you, um, then you are decreasing your odds of becoming a potential victim and increasing your odds of surviving that. And quite
Exactly. I mean,
often,
if you have that situational awareness and you see the signs,
mm,
you can get out of the way. There's no need to fight back. Rather run
avoid,
than
avoid.
try and be a John Wick and a Chuck Norris and
Yeah.
whatever, because then you sit with other issues. So see the problem, identify it, and rather try and get you and your family out of the way than have to fight back.
As far as possible, yes. It's not always possible, but
No.
if you can, it's well worth it. And then for me, the training sort of joins up with that. I think what you guys also, and you can back me up on this, because you are part of the guys who are and girls who are out there weekend after weekend after weekend working with students. So I think you guys, you will have seen this for yourself. Very often a student arrives to start doing training, and it's not something that they've done. They're uncertain, they are newbies to the firearm world, and you can see it. So when you work with them and you build them up and they stick with it, um, to see how their thinking changes about the whole thing, and how it almost starts becoming a much more natural way of doing your thing, thinking about these things. And you don't spend hours thinking about it. It's little things for me, like when I go to buy um, stuff for my dad, for instance, and I stop at the Dis-Chem at the bottom here, and in the parking tray. As I'm approaching for a potential parking, I'm just scanning to see I just want to know what's going on. As I get out
Yeah.
of my vehicle, I first do a quick scan just to see. It's silly little things like that can make a huge difference at the end of the day. It doesn't mean that you are permanently in this hyper vigilant state where you are, it feels as if people are chasing you. Um,
Exactly.
that's a problem. That's where you don't want to be. You want to be relaxed
No.
while you're doing this. And the training again adds up when it comes to that, because as your skill levels increase, you also become more confident in handling situations, which
Yeah, it's
probably.
like I said, with what we see on level 2, 3 going on,
Mm,
the more time they spend on a range, the more they do it, certain actions just become natural. They don't even have to think about it. Where if you look where they start on level 1, it was all frightened and don't know what to do and
mm,
scared, and now it just flows and it's natural. And what's amazing is to see how they evolve, especially with the Valkyrie group, the all girls group.
mm.
When you get girls there that they've never touched a firearm, so they are scared out of their minds. And once they're done with that course, they can't talk enough about how it boosted their confidence,
Mm.
how much safer they feel, and they're almost a different person. And it's just amazing to see how they evolve and to hear those testaments.
So when that moment comes, and we hope and pray that it never does, there is no reset, there is no second chance, there is no one stepping in to fix it for you. The real question is simple. Are you living like someone who's prepared to operate by yourself? Or are you still hoping you won't have to, and basically hoping for the best? If you like this video, please click on the like button and share this video with people who will find value from it as well. Subscribe to the channel, and as always, smash that bell icon so you can get notifications of new videos coming out. If you are interested in any of the training under the Loan Operator Program and Fortis Proactive Defense Solutions, there is always a link in the description below the video. Check it out, and we look forward to seeing you on a range one of these days. Gerard, thank you so much for joining us and spending some time with us, as we trust that this will add value to some people out there.
Rian, appreciate the time. Thank you for having me.